Daljit, go and make me £15 million, but don't send me to jail. That was it. All right. That's exactly what he said to me. I said, all right, Steve. And what he meant was there's black and white and then there's grey. You bend it, but you don't break it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Clinical Pharmacist podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time today, my name is Ruhina, and I am the CEO of Clinical Pharmacist Solutions. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host and our COO, Sarah Dekmak. So today we are continuing on our series of Entrepreneurship and Alternative Pharmacist Career Pathways, where we have been speaking to a number of different pharmacists who have gone in different directions and built something really unique across the way. So today's guest is someone really special who's built not just one, but four pharmaceutical businesses from the ground up. So he's done it the hard way, and that's through decades of hands-on experience at entry level in the industry. Daljit Birdi grew up in pharmacy, but originally wanted to be a civil engineer like his father. So he spent over 18 years working across community pharmacy and wholesaling before co-founding GlucoRx and then going on to establish Fontus Health Limited, a UK-based pharmaceutical company in the West Midlands, which specializes in licensed medicines, medical devices, and skincare. So Fontus Health is probably best known for the Aproderm emollient range, a product line which makes a real difference for patients that are living with eczema or dry skin conditions in primary care. What makes Daljit's story particularly special is that it's a family business, and that's in the truest sense. He built this alongside his wife, Nav, who's also a pharmacist. And they're driven by the genuine belief that better products equals better patient outcomes. So he's an entrepreneur, he's a pharmacist, and he's a straight talker. So I think you're going to really enjoy this one. So Daljit, thank you so much for joining us today. To start with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey, and how you got to where you are today?
Right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Hopefully, I can share some of my experiences, which will help someone else on the road to entrepreneurship. I'm going to be 56 this year in May. I qualified as a pharmacist in 1992, the first year that the pre-reg exam was actually invented. And I studied at Leicester Polytechnic, which is now at Montfort University. And I got into Leicester through clearing. So I was really rejected. And I rang them up the day I got my grades, which were a B, C, and a D. And they said, yeah, come along. Well, we've got a space for you. So I turned up and I started pharmacy. And like you said, originally I wanted to do civil engineering. I was dead set on doing civil engineering. I loved maths, I loved technical drawing, I loved physics. And it was only until one day my aunt drove up in this brand new red Toyota MR2. And I sat her down with my dad and I said, what do you do? She goes, I'm a pharmacist. I went, really? And I said, well, which of you two makes more money? And my dad said, she does. And literally, on a flip of a coin, I said, well, I'm going to do pharmacy then. And that's how I got into pharmacy. I studied at Leicester. The first year was great. It was great because you had to get up in the mornings for practical. So you had to go in and therefore you sat your lectures. And I passed the first year. The second year was slightly different. You had lectures in the morning, which I never got up to go to. And the practicals were in the afternoon. And you know what? I failed my second year. So I had to repeat it. And that was a steep learning curve for me because I'd never failed in my life at anything. And finally graduated, got a place with Boots, did my pre-reg at Hinckley, had a great tutor, learned a lot. And the first day I graduated, I qualified as a pharmacist. Usually they put you back into the store you're with. But literally I got a call that morning saying, you've got to head off to Rugby and you're going to manage a store which has got 2 floors because there's no pharmacist there. And literally I was in at the deep end managing about 20 members of staff and a pharmacy, which the first prescription I remember was for aspirin 75 milligram dispersible. It took me 1 hour to dispense it, okay, because I would just check in and check in and check in. But I was there for nearly 4 months. And by the end of it, I'd learned a lot. I'd learned how to work with people. You know, we really got on as a team and I'd managed the store really well. And then my career path with Boots was store management. I was put into different stores, managed them, ran them, and then moved on to a bigger store. And eventually I moved on from Boots to Co-op Pharmacy, loved it, really knew the people, knew the doctors, turned the store around. It would run itself. When you're in community pharmacy, the worst thing you want is for somebody, you know, when the locum turns up, you're still getting phone calls. But I'd managed the store, I'd trained the staff up that it would run when I'm not there. So I did actually have a legitimate day off. And then I went to Sainsbury's because they were just getting into pharmacy and I wanted to sort of get into a head office position. So I went and worked in Sainsbury's in Coventry. And then I thought, you know what, I need a business qualification here. So in 1999, both me and my wife were pharmacists. We could afford to. I took a whole year out and did an MBA at Aston University, which was great. It really taught me how to manage a business because you did operations, finance, marketing. And when you're working for big organizations, you sort of pigeon yourself in one department. But when you've got an MBA, you realize that they're all connected. So you can think more like a managing director and say what's best for the business rather than what's best for the department. And from there, I managed to get a position with a company called Sunscript, which had about 30 pharmacies up in the Northwest. And I ran their warehouse. They just got into wholesaling. So I set up a brand new warehouse for them, trading generics. And this was the time when there was a massive shortage of certain generics, some amoxicillin, frusemide, the coproximol was still around then. And prices were going through the roof. I mean, people were trading these products. So it was a very trading environment. Sunscript closed because they were owned by an American company, but they decided to get out. The pharmacies were sold to Cohen's, and I'd be technically been made redundant. But because I'd made a network of contacts in the industry, I managed to get a position with A Pharmaceuticals, an enterprise based in Stoke. So I worked there and I worked my way up to eventually coming down to Coventry, their head office, and I started looking after generics and grey market ethicals. And that's where I really learned everything I know today about entrepreneurship and how to make money, because I was exposed to some serious entrepreneurs in this business who they set up parallel imports. They were the people that brought parallel imports into the marketplace. And that's where I learned everything I know today. That's who I give my success to. Is I was just around some very, these people were in the Financial Times rich list. And I used to take the piss out of them and say, can you give me an autograph? And they'd say, look, don't believe half the stuff that goes in there. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of really interesting. You've been through loads of like different kind of career pathways which have got you to where you are today. I think it's been a common theme across the series where we've said actually it's the people that you surround yourself with and it's the people that you learn from, the mentorship and that support that system that you have around you that really helps you to take your thinking and take your mindset to the next place. So you really interestingly said there that you did an MBA as well, and that kind of got you to think about all the different aspects, like the financial side, how to run a business. How have you now gone away from where you were, and what kind of made you make that decision that you were going to go and co-found GlucoRx? How did that journey come about?
So I was approached by Nilesh and Parag, who also co-founded it with me, and they said, "Look, you've got the corporate background, we've got the cash, and we've got the sort of trading background. We've got an idea." And so we got together, and I said, "Yeah, that's going to work, and I'll come and join you." And that's really where it was. So Nilesh was the MD. I was the sort of commercial stroke sales director, and we set up a sales team. I put the processes in place because having worked in a corporate environment, it's very structured, which has its benefits, but also has its limitations as well. All right. When you're an entrepreneur, you do need some core basics and some processes that people do need to follow, but you need to be flexible. And that's where you find that a big pharma, for them to make a decision, even in the UK, it would take them 6 to 9 months because they'd have to write off to America and get compliance to get involved. Whereas I've got people come into my office and they say, I've got an idea, and I'll think about it for 30 seconds and say, yeah, go ahead and do
Yeah.
it. And being nimble gives you that competitive advantage because you can adapt very quickly. You don't have to go through layers of processes. And I get it, in the big pharma, it's required because they are so big and they're so regulated. But with small pharma, it's a lot more flexible. And as long as you comply with the MHRA guidelines, that's really what matters.
Yeah, so I think it's almost removing that red tape of all the authorizing stages that you have. As long as you're following the MHRA guidance, as long as your products are safe and clinically effective, and that's essentially where your pharmacist background and skills really come into play. And then you've got all the other supporting bits and pieces there. So from that, I think you could have been in a place where you said, okay, I've done my pharmacy degree and I'm going to stay in community pharmacy. What was that shift in mindset that took you away from, okay, I'm going to stay in community pharmacy to actually, I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to do this. I want to go into pharma and make my own company. Was that something that you always had in your mind from the beginning, or it's something that's just kind of built along the way?
To be fair, it's adapted along the way. So when I
Hmm.
started community pharmacy, the goal was I want to be a SAG-D store manager, which is one of the biggest store managers that you can have, right? Because that's all you knew when you were in Boots. You moved up the different size of stores. Then when I shifted eventually to co-op, which I loved, it was literally managing a whole store on its own with about 20 members of staff. And then I moved to Sainsbury's because I thought Sainsbury's head office is in London. I'd like to be part of the head office team looking at how to improve front of shop and what services we can offer. But I need a business background.
Yeah.
I did the MBA, and then the project that I needed to do got me in touch with Sunscript, the pharmacy chain, talking to the operations director who we were working with on the project. It was about what's the efficiency of the vans that they use to deliver the medicines? Is it cost effective or not? And that started a conversation with the ops director. And he said to me, well, you know what? I like working with you. You seem pretty a nice guy. You seem to know what you're talking about. We're going to set up a warehouse. Do you want to run it? I said, I've never run it in my life, but yeah, I'll give it a go. Okay. So that got me into wholesaling. Through wholesaling, I was networking with other wholesalers, your Lexons, your Chemilines, your Sigma Pharmaceuticals. I knew all these guys because they were selling to us and we were selling to them. So I saw how they were working. I started to get to understand how the wholesaling market worked. From there, I got into AAH. At AAH, I was introduced to a whole other host of entrepreneurs. I mean, remit from Steve Dunn, who was the MD of AAH, was Daljit, go and make me £15 million, but don't send me to jail. That was it. All right. That's exactly what he said to me. I said, okay, all right, Steve, I won't send you to jail. And what he meant was there's black and white and then there's gray. All
Hmm.
right. You bend it, but you don't break it. And to be fair, being a pharmacist, we are very ethical. All right. We
Hmm.
govern. And so that stood me in good stand. I would never do anything illegal. And I had a very good team as well, the regulatory team, Peter Blundell, who became an MHR inspector. I remember going to him and saying, look, I've been offered stock, which I've never been offered before. It's too good to be true. I think this is counterfeit. Okay. He said, right, bring it in. Let's quarantine it and I'll check it. I said, right, you check it. I'm not going to do anything with it. So we brought it in. He checked it. He says, yeah, I think it is counterfeit. We actually contacted the manufacturer in the UK. We said, look, we've got some samples. We think this is counterfeit. They said, no, that's not counterfeit. We said, it is counterfeit. Eventually, we contacted the MHRA and it was counterfeit. It was counterfeit stock. So, and that happened on 2 or 3 occasions. So I learned if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true,
Yep.
right? You don't get nothing for free in life. And so we were very ethical like that, but we loved what we were doing. You know, the other entrepreneurs that we dealt with, they became very close friends of ours, right? Because it was a very fair, I let them make money, they let me make money. I mean, there was me, Alliance Healthcare, and Phoenix, and we were the two buyers of all of this grey market stock. I used to get 80% of the stock in the marketplace, and then they'd go to Alliance and Phoenix because of the relationships I had with them, right? And through that, I'd make AH so much money. I think at one point I was making 10% of AAH's net margin. So this
Oh,
is a three
wow.
billion pound company. Me alone with one other guy were making 10% of how much money they were making, and that was it. Okay. Otherwise, they were turning over all this money, and a lot of it was going in costs. So it's about one step has led to another, but you've got to be involved in it. You've got to be able to take that risk and say, yeah, I'll set up a wholesaling business with you. I've never done it before. All right. I don't know what I'm doing, but you know what? I'll give it a good go. Okay. It can't be that complicated. And then, oh, actually, there's an opportunity here. I'll go into there. And then there's an opportunity there. And then there's an opportunity. One door will always lead to another door. But if you don't go through the door, you're never going to lead to another door. You're going to be quarantined in that room. And that's how I've got to where I am today.
Yeah, I think that's just, it's super impressive actually to see like all the steps that you've gone through. And I think it's that ambition and that mindset of taking advantage of every opportunity that's faced you.
Yeah.
So I do think we can all be guilty of this, where we get bogged down with a lot of work and we just try and get through the work that's in front of us. So say whether it's in a community pharmacy and we're getting through all the checkings, all the dossets, etc., and we don't see what's outside of that is literally trying to get from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and get everything done that day. But actually then seeing this opportunity is here. How do I make this system more efficient? And actually thinking like that opens up doors to more conversations, and more conversations open up doors to more opportunities. So I think actually that's a really valuable lesson for anyone that is listening to take advantage of opportunities. Don't just get bogged down by the workload that's in front of you. See who's around you, open up to network with people that are around you as well.
You're right. I mean, community pharmacy is a great example. You find loads of pharmacists that will stay behind the counter. They're putting labels on boxes. They're counting. Why are you doing that? You're more than that. Is not your job. I mean, 20 years ago, I was training dispensers to say, you are going to do everything. I'm just going to check. And I'm going to be on the counter serving customers.
Yeah.
Right? When I used to do locum work, they'd look at me like gone mad. I'd say, how do you use the till? They said, why do you need to know how to use the till? I said, because I'm going to be serving customers. You're doing the dispensing. I'm not. I'm going to do. They go, no, the pharmacist sits in the back with his paper, all right, and his laptop and stock market, and they check. I said, no, I want to be talking to patients, all right, because I love talking to patients. That's what they come in for. And you learn so much from the patient as well, all right? And, you build your counter prescribing techniques as well. Is this the right product for them or not? The history taking, all of that. I'd love it. And that's what I'd really love that. I could not be sat in the back. It's so boring. It does your brain in. And again, that drove me to get to the front because I thought I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. I used to have a race with the labeler to see whether I could get the product and have it ready before the label was printed. That's how bored I was.
But I think, again, Daljit, it's amazing to see your mindset with that because I think as well, it's utilizing your team at its best as well. So, you know, you were training up dispensers to the best of their abilities and capabilities and opening up that role for them further. So, number one, you're like making sure that your team are enjoying their roles. And we actually see that with your own team now as well. We love working with the Fontus team.
I love working with you.
Yeah, it goes to show that like having the right team, having the right ethos mindset behind that actually pushes you forward. So having those conversations at the counter, pushing your team to work to their best, and that kind of shifts that mindset to a progressive mindset rather than actually, I'm just going to sit here and I'm the manager of this pharmacy now. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to check this box and I'm going to bag it up and you guys can go and talk to the patients. It's actually just stepping away from that and saying, I want to be involved. I'm going to go and talk to the patients. Actually, I want to make this system more efficient.
Yeah.
And I think mindset is the key thing here. And I think you can either step back and be, okay, this is my mindset, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or you can say, I want to do all of these wonderful things, which you have done, which I think a lot of people get stuck in the middle somewhere. So it's literally just taking it to that next step.
Yeah, I think you've got to lead by example. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in the dispensary and you've got your counter assistants all day long, they're going to keep coming in asking you questions and that keeps disturbing you. Whereas if you're out there, they'll actually see you're leading. I mean, when we set up Fontus, I don't ask any of my staff to do anything which I don't do myself or haven't done. I remember going to trade shows. We'd set up first thing in the morning. I remember one day in Birmingham, my daughter came with me. We used to put leaflets on, in best practice, we used to put leaflets on every single chair. Now imagine 300 chairs. She'd be there 7 o'clock with me in the morning. All right. And then I'd go and drop her off at school in Birmingham and come back out. All right. And the whole team, we would do it together. So even now, I mean, we're going to go to CPC. I'm going this year. The three of us are going to be setting up and we're going to be packing down and we're going to be the first one's in, last one's out. But you've got to lead by example because if you don't, then people just don't respect you. They think you're sat in your ivory tower and you don't know what we've gone through. Well, I have. I've sold. I've gone to see nurses. I'll go to see doctors. I go to see patients. I have patients ringing me at Fontus. If they get a call through Med Information, I say, put her through to me and I'll have a lovely conversation with this old lady about her concerns and the emollient and stuff. And I'll explain it and not a problem. We'll get that sorted for you. That's what it's all about. You've got to do that. You can't be hidden in an ivory tower. It's just, you don't. I learned so much by going out and talking to doctors and healthcare professionals that I can then see it from a different angle than the rep might see it. I can look at opportunities. If you don't, you never see those opportunities.
Yeah.
I think as well that resonates with us so well. So we see you guys at the best practice show and we're doing the same thing. We're like sitting there like building our stand from scratch. And I think it's that hard work behind it that a lot of people don't see. If you call into our call lines at Clinical Pharmacist Solutions, you'll often get me or Sarah on the phone. Like you have to be able to do every single like
Job.
step, every single job, as small as it is, as big as
Yeah.
it is. You have to know it. You have to master it. You have to, if you don't know it, then how will you teach it to someone else? How will you like your team grow as well? I
Yeah.
think hard work comes from a place of actually going through every single one of the stages. And I think you've probably had a lot of challenges as well along the way. Like, I know you've described like this great career with AAH and then having a really great network around you, but I'm sure there's been some challenges along the way that have shaped you to where you are today. Do you have any of those examples that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of examples of challenges. It's just how you deal with them. I
Hmm.
think that's the key thing is how you deal with it. Yeah, and the definition of stupidity is keep making the same mistake and expecting a different result. All
Yeah.
right. The key is you've got to learn from your mistakes. At AH, when I made that 15 million, right, I probably lost three.
Yeah.
Right. So I've actually made 18, lost three, made 15. Okay. As long as you're winning more than you're losing, you're in a positive direction. And that's the way to look at it. You will definitely fail. You guarantee you will fail. Okay. But as long as you learn from it and you say, right, I know never to do that again, or let me try something differently. That's how you learn and you keep progressing. You never let the failure as a setback. You think of it as a learning tool. That's all. You know what? That was a great learning tool. Hopefully, it didn't cost you a lot of money. I remember when Navin Engineer from Chemidex, a really great friend of mine, he came into my office once when I was at AH and he said, look, Daljit, I've just bought Tagamet, the brand from GlaxoSmithKline. I want to do a dispensing doctor deal. And I'm sat there with him. He sat opposite me, and next to me is this lady from marketing, Emma. I said, Emma, can you talk to him about dispensing doctor deals? Because AH used to have a dispensing doctor deal and stuff like that. And I remember him looking at me and I'm looking at him. And in my head, I'm thinking how much money he's going to make because I could work it out. And I'm like slowly smiling. I got this big smile on my face. And he's looking at me going, don't say nothing. Please don't say anything to this lady. Right. And she's trying to sell this dispensing doctor deal. And he's going, please don't say nothing, Daljit. All right. And at the end, she left. And I'm just going, Navin, you're going to make so much money. He goes, thank God you did not say anything to this lady, right? Okay. And that's the sort of relationship I had with these guys, right? And he said to me, I said, look, what's it cost to get into pharma? And I mean, I'm talking nearly 15 years ago. He said, minimum £250,000. I said, nah, it's not going to cost £4. He said, £250,000 minimum, any product you want. This isn't a lot. This is a normal Me Too generic. I said, no. He said, yeah, all of the costs, £250,000. When we started Fontus, and we started with his daughter, actually, she wanted to get into industry. And I said to her, I said, listen, as long as we do not compete with Navin, all right, I'm happy we can do a business together, and that's fine. And I remember going to the first CPHI meeting in Germany, all right, and we went to buy a vitamin D3 license. And the company we saw, they said, yeah, it's going to cost you £250,000 is the license fee. Then you've got to buy the product. You've got to do your own license application, and it's non-exclusive. We walked away. We didn't have £250,000, right? Now, £500,000 minimum. We don't even bat an eyelid. So yeah, that's what we expect. Okay. So when people come to me and say, how much is it to come into pharma? I say now, £500,000. They look at me going, I said, yeah, you're not going to have to mortgage your house. You're going to have to mortgage your mum and dad's house. All right. Okay. But they don't believe it because there is a lot of cost. But we were lucky in the sense that, and this is where having a pharmacy background, having worked in community, understanding the drug tariff, understanding how payments do, understanding the ICB, I mean, they were PCTs then, okay, how the full supply chain. And we came out with a range of vitamin Ds. This is the days when there was unlicensed vitamin D and everybody was buying it at £100. We thought, what? We can sell it at £9.99 or £21. We came out with massive range. It's still turning over £1 million a year today. 11 years later, we haven't marketed it for 9 years, right? But we got into that market and the profit from there was reinvested in new products and new products. And that's how we built the business, by reinvesting in new products. So, and along the way, we've had products which have failed.
Yeah.
We've had products that we put money into development, and literally 2 years later, the development has failed, and we've just literally, there's £500,000 gone.
Hmm.
Nothing you can do. Or we've got the product, but the day we started it, the drug tariff was £100 a pack. By the time we finished, it's at £5 a pack. And it's like, well, it's not worth launching, but we've now got the dossier. All right.
Yeah.
So you have all of those, and it is all about risk. You will win, you will lose. As long as you're winning more than you're losing, you're heading in the right direction, but expect to lose.
I want
Yeah.
to ask about Fontus actually. So
Yeah.
obviously, I feel like the Aproderm range did take the NHS by storm.
Mhm.
And we know that in terms of like cost savings, whilst like still providing really good quality products to patients, has been like a key thing, I think has kept the company going as well and growing. Was there something that sort of came to you, or did you identify any gaps in the market to specifically focus on skincare? Or was it just by chance, or did you do a cost calculation? Yeah, it'd be good to know like how you sort of came up with that idea.
The product came about because our youngest daughter, Priya, had eczema. And
Okay.
we tried all the products, me and my wife, we tried the Diprobases and the Epiderms, but nothing seemed to work. One day my wife said to me, she goes, look, we own a pharmaceutical company. Why don't we develop a range of creams, right? There's no alternative to Aveeno. They've got the whole market to themselves. Why don't we develop one? We said, yeah, okay, let's go. We found a great CMO partner of ours, and we developed the whole range. So we thought, well, we'll make a colloidal oat, we'll make an emollient, a gel, and an ointment. And being pharmacists, we thought, okay, we're not going to just do a copy. Like the Zero range is literally an identical product, right? I actually know the guy who invented Zero, Daljit Birdi, great guy. He was a dispensing doctor. The stories he tells me is phenomenal, but that's for another podcast. So we developed them, but being a pharmacist, one of the things, when you're talking to a patient, the first thing you think of, is it suitable from birth, or is there an age restriction, right? So we thought, well, let's get rid of that. It's got to be suitable from birth. It's got to be paraffin free. It's got to be SLS free. It's got to be this free. It's got to be suitable for vegans or vegetarians, okay? So we gave all of those to the CMO. We said, that has to be the formulation. And that was the basis of Aproderm. And from there, if it's got Aproderm written on the side of it, it will tick every single one of those boxes. And that's how the range came about. And then we looked at the pricing, and then we looked at the market, and that's how we started. We started then going into the market. I remember the first couple of trade shows, it was, oh, you're the alternative to Aveeno, aren't you? And that was it. I said, yeah, we'll have that. Thank you very much. I'm not going to argue with that. And now Aproderm, yeah, you're right. It has grown. The team are doing phenomenally well, working with you guys as well. We're literally getting double-digit growths every single year. Okay.
Amazing.
I think probably the target is to 250,000 units a month in the next 3 years. And that'll be about 25% of the market.
Wow. So it's literally gone from, oh, you're the alternative to Aveeno. Aveeno who?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Aveeno, if you're listening.
Yeah. They've disbanded their sales team because of us,
Wow.
and we've had a few of them work for us. But yeah, it is hard, but it's a massive market. And you know what? We've been so lucky to work with key opinion leaders who we've learned from, right? This is the thing. We don't just hire them to do a talk. I sit there and I listen to them, and I actually interrogate them and say, what are your biggest challenges? And one of the biggest things was education. Dermatology education for doctors is literally non-existent.
Mhm.
It's always around emollients, for instance.
Yep.
Okay. So, we've launched a Rash Decisions podcast series with George Moncrief and Roger Henderson. And we just said to them, look, all we want you to do is talk skin for primary care. Nothing complicated. All right. What are all of the topics? And you choose. There could be a treatment which doesn't even involve emollients. We don't care. We're here for education now. Okay. So, I think there's something like 37 podcasts now. We even did one on monkeypox when it came out. We've done one on COVID and how to recognize COVID in skin, acne, rosacea. Obviously, you've got eczema, psoriasis, viral skin infections, nail fungal infections. After I finish today, I'm going to Nottingham, then I'm back to do a webinar. It's the 10th webinar this year. It's the 10th in the series of dermatoscopy, which we do with George Moncrief. And we get something like 1,000 people register to come onto these webinars, and we do it for free. Okay. And so we put a lot of money back into that, but we've also learned from them. The Aproderm tub, if you have a look at the ointment tub, it's got spatulas in it. And that's George Moncrief said to me, If you stick your finger in a tub of ointment or cream, within 2 weeks, that's infected. And people are putting that on their face.
Yeah.
I don't know why companies don't put spatulas in. And I just listened to him and yeah, good idea. 6 months later, I said, George, have a look at this. He nearly fell off his chair. And so when I work with these guys, I say, what are you missing? And I say, you know what? There isn't this product with this in it and that in it, because doctors are having to prescribe 2 separate products. So I'm already working on a project now, which is 2 products individually, which I want to put into 1 product. All right. Now that'll take 1 year to 2 years. But I've learned that from listening to ultimately my customer and saying, what is it you need? And that's key. As an entrepreneur, you don't know everything. You're there to fix a solution for a customer. So know your customer. Right.
Yep.
If you sit there idly thinking, I've got an idea, you've got to test it out, because you've seen it on Dragon's Den. They're sat there going, it's not really a problem that I've got, so I'm not really going to invest. And the same can happen. You can have this idea, but no one wants it. And sometimes you're going to create the demand, and that's great as well. That's another lovely journey in how to create demand. But I learn from people that I'm going to ultimately sell to. That's who I ask.
And I think that's the important key thing here is you find that there's a problem, you're looking for the solution, but actually you need to understand all the other little bits that are going on there. Like just having the spatula makes so much of a difference in the outcome of the product. So it's knowing your product, knowing your audience, knowing what's missing, and that's your niche to be different from everyone else. And I think it's just being able to understand the problem that you want to solve. And I think actually you've done, you've gone from a personal experience with trying to make a product for your daughter to solve a problem there. Then you've seen the wider problem. Then you've taken patient feedback, customer experience, knowing what your client wants. And essentially, that's what makes the product great. And that's what makes the brand great, because you're listening to what people want and making something that is so beneficial and useful for them. So I think that's another key lesson that everyone listening can probably take away from this today, that knowing what the problem is, finding that solution, but also don't just skip out on the bits in the middle. You have to know what the patient wants, what the client wants, and make your solution match all of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I go to trade shows, I don't sell. I don't go there to sell the product. I go there to talk to customers and say, what's your biggest challenge? I'm the one talking to them saying, can you tell me what I need to know, rather than here's the product?
Yeah.
It's usually the other way. And they're usually quite shocked. And they go, oh, you want to listen to me? I say, yeah. What's your biggest challenge? It's when we bought out the starter pack. And that was because, in dermatology in hospitals, they get all these free samples. And if you go in, you walk out with a carrier bag full of these little tubes of cream. And the nurses say, just whichever one you like, that's the one you can use, right? But the patient takes a year to get through them. So we thought, there isn't an alternative. There isn't that solution in primary care, because doctors don't want loads of samples, and we don't really want to give loads of samples. And it took us 2 years arguing with the drug tariff to put together the starter pack so that they would actually list it. Okay. And it was an idea that me and my wife came up. We said, you know what? All of these sit feeds do starter packs because the patient tries and they find the flavor they like, and away you go. But you haven't got that with emollients.
Yeah.
And so we put the starter pack together. We priced it perfectly. It's actually cheaper than writing all 4 of the individual products. Lovely box. You got the booklet. You got information in there. And doctors love it. They go, you know what? I don't know why anybody didn't do it. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's all from our experience as community pharmacy, seeing what the competitors on other products are doing and saying, well, why don't we use that in this disease state? And it's never been done before. And again, on your point, going to see your customer, understanding what they need, understanding what a patient needs. I mean, we tell doctors, look, treat your patient like Goldilocks. Okay. Get them to try them all. Right, and then they'll come back to you and say, I want the yellow one. And again, the colors. My wife is very in the days of dispensing errors, everything's a white box, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a dispensary. I'm sure the font's gone even smaller. I don't know, my eyesight's going. But when we first launched Zaluron, there were 5 strengths. And just before they were about to put the license in, they said, oh, here's the packaging. And we looked at it, and my wife looked at it. It's just black and white. Well, what's the difference here? She goes, right, stop there. She went back, redesigned it, and we've got 5 different colors: okay, green, yellow, red, blue, etc. Our competitors who were using the same license did exactly the same. Right? And we're like, whoa, okay. Sinreal, our fentanyl range, there's 6 different strengths, every single one brightly color coded. We did the same with the Apriderm range because people aren't going to remember. They'll come to you and say,
I want the yellow one.
Exactly. I want the yellow one. I want the green one. And so it's not just for the patient's benefit, it's for the healthcare professional's benefit, and it's also for the pharmacist's benefit when they come to dispensing. All right. And that has worked so much in our favor. But again, it's all our experience. Having been on the community pharmacy side, we know what it is to be a community pharmacy. We know the challenges that they have. We've understood what practice-based pharmacists' challenges are as well now, although never worked there, but we do understand what their challenges is. And you've got to understand everybody in the supply chain and who you're working with and try and tick as many of those boxes.
And I think just on that as well, it's not just a easier decision that you've made for the patient, the pharmacist, and the GP that's prescribing those. Essentially, you've made a small change which has impacted patient safety in a massive way. So I think that change and that observation alone probably has reduced the amount of like patient errors, dispensing errors that have occurred. So I think that is a massive thing. And that's probably something that you don't realize, like how massive that is
Yeah.
for like patients that are out there having those Xaluron doses. Like you could very easily have a dispensing error,
Yeah.
wrong dose given to a patient, wrong brand given to a patient. We've seen it
We
ourselves
still
in
see it
community
now.
pharmacy.
Yeah.
We've seen
Yeah.
those near miss error logs, and actually, that small intervention has massive clinical patient safety improvements. So I think, yeah, amazing as it is. So I know we've been talking to you for a long time now, Daljit. So I've got 2 final questions for you. If you could go back and change something now, so throughout your career pathways, is there any one thing that you would do differently?
No. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, in the sense that my career path has been so varied. Without that variation, I would not have been lucky to meet the people that I have, that I can now call my friends.
Yeah. I like that. I think, everything that happens for a reason, whether it's a success, whether it's a failure, whether it's pathway that you weren't expecting to take. I think the outcome of where you are and everything that happens is a result of hard work and just the journey that you do take. And for pharmacists that are wanting to take that next step or thinking about doing something a little bit different or going into the pharma world, what advice would you give to them?
The best advice I give to pharmacists now, because a lot of them want to get into industry, okay?
Mhm.
But they really don't know what industry is. There's this perception it's working in a lab or regulatory affairs. But there's regulatory affairs, there's quality, there's marketing, there's sales, there's operations, right? There's finance. Well, finance probably not, because you probably need to. But I am rubbish at finance. It was the worst module. I mean, when I did my MBA, I didn't even know what a balance sheet was or a profit and loss account. Okay, so I hire people that know finance, and then I just ask them questions, and I say, I bought it at this, I sold it at that, and I made that much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's as complicated as it gets. Okay. But pharmacists, when you graduate, you go and work in community, you're going to be on a decent salary, whatever, 35, 40,000 pounds a year. That's not a starting salary in industry, because when you come into industry, they don't need that much of your pharmacy knowledge. Okay. What they need is you've gone through this degree, you're clinically aware of certain conditions. You can sit there and methodically look at a text document and reassess it. But you've got a lot of learning to do in industry to become an industrial pharmacist, right? Even just to become a qualified person, a QP, can take nearly 10 years. All right. You've got to work in a factory that makes tablets, then one that does liquids, then one that does injections. Okay. Because ultimately, the QP at the end of it, when I have a batch of product coming over from Europe, a QP has to release that stock. If that QP does not release it, I cannot sell it. Simple as that. I can't override them. I can't say, oh, forget that. The QP has to sign it. So they're totally independent. And they make 6-figure salaries. But it takes 10 years of investment and moving around from job to job to get that experience to say, I can actually sign off those products. Then you've got regulatory affairs, you've got pharmacovigilance, you've got quality. These are all different. And you've got to work with people who know what they're doing, and you've got to learn from them. And at the moment, you're a graduate, you're up against pharmaceutical cosmetic science graduates, biomedical science graduates, and you're sitting there going, oh, well, I've got a pharmacy degree. Yeah, but we can teach you all the same stuff. All right. So if you're going to get into industry, get in there at the lower level early and locum on the weekends to supplement your income. You might start on £28,000 a year, but you're on that track. But once you're on your £40,000 and then you go to industry, they're going to say, we ain't paying you £40,000 because we can get a graduate for 27, 28. Okay. So if you're serious about industry, get in early and you're on that career path. And once you're in, you will get access to all of the different, you might start in regulatory affairs, but you think it's not for me. I want to go into quality. I want to go into vigilance. I want to go into marketing. But once you're in, then you've got that opportunity to network, because there is a lot of cross-functional working in industry. And again, put yourself forward. That's the one thing people don't do. When your boss says to them, oh, I've got a project, say, listen, can I take that over for you? Let me work on that with you. All right. They will appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rather than being told to do it, put yourself forward. All right. Say, it'd be great learning for me. Can I work on that with you? All right. Don't be scared. But that's the best advice that you get into industry early, not after 5 years as a locum where you made your 60 grand a year. You think, oh, I want to get in industry. Well, it's a massive pay cut.
Yeah, it's difficult to go from that salary to a lower salary at that stage. So, yeah, agreed. That's such great advice there. I think if you want to do it early and just make sure that you're taking advantage of every opportunity that's coming your way.
Yeah.
Take every opportunity to learn, take every opportunity to learn from mentors and people around you. So, thank you so much for joining us today, Daljit. It's been so interesting to learn about your journey and all the kind of varied opportunities and experiences that you've had along the way. So I feel that this is going to be super useful for all of those that are listening. I think this conversation really highlights that pharmacists can take their skills beyond traditional roles and build something impactful. So not just learning from experiences and opportunities, but actually pulling in like personal experiences along the way as well. And thank you to everyone that's listening. I hope this episode has given you something to think about. And if you're thinking about taking a different pathway, going down the industrial route, I hope this has given you a little bit of guidance and advice on how to get there. So, as always, there's no gatekeeping, just honest conversations that we've been having here today. And we will see you all in the next episode of the Clinical Pharmacist podcast.
Thank you very much, Ruhina.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Tara. All the best.
Thanks.